Welcome back to the Christian Kirkley Show, and today we're going to be talking about radical reality acceptance. What radical reality acceptance is taking reality and accepting it. This is really as simple as that. What we have to realize is that most of human suffering comes from not wanting to accept reality as it is. Think about a criminal. Think about a drug addict. Think about someone who does things like adultery or lying, right? All of those neurotic behaviors stem from people not wanting to accept reality as it is. The sunk cost fallacy, holding on to a house that you should have sold and you know it's a bad deal. Staying in that business relationship even though you know it's a bad deal, right? Because you're not wanting to accept that maybe you made a bad decision. There was a really good quote that one of my performance psychologists, Sarah, made the other day, and she said that pain is inevitable, but suffering is an option. Suffering is a choice. We can choose to suffer, right? We can wallow in our self-pity. We can feel bad for ourselves. Or we can choose to turn it around at any moment. The other day I was down and out because a bunch of minor frustrations and inconveniences, things were just not going the greatest, and I was just in a negative mindset, and it just cascaded over the next few days, and I kept making bad self-destructive decisions. And then the next day I said, I'm going to turn it around. And I did. It really can be as easy as that sometimes. And maybe it's a choice of you saying, I'm going to turn it around. And you say that every day. And things don't turn around. Eventually they will. If you keep telling yourself, I'm going to turn it around. Next day, it's going to be tough, right? Pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. I'm going to turn it around. You wake up again. You keep on fighting. You keep on pushing. There's always going to be pain. The human existence is pain, right? Thank God we have Jesus that died for our sins, right? So this is temporary. We're only going to be here for a moment. Then we get to spend eternity in heaven with a loving creator, right? And the thing is why would a loving God create things like cancer, children die, all these awful things, right? Genocides, all these awful things, Ukraine, Israel. It's because that humans, we have a choice, right? So that's the beautiful thing about free will, is we have a choice to choose God. And if everything was rosy, it wouldn't really be a choice, right? So like, if everything was perfect and we were all puppets and robots, we wouldn't have a choice. That there wouldn't be free will. And is that really love? No, right? So there's hard things so that we can have faith and choose God, right? There's sin that has entered this world. Essentially, my theory for the reason why we have things like sickness, etc., it's sin. It's the manifestation of sin played out in our timeline, right? Anyways, God freed us from that. Back on the subject of radical reality acceptance. That is part of radical reality acceptance, is realizing that we live in a fallen world. Life's going to be tough. You got to keep grinding. I know it's not the most rosy news, but the moment that you just accept that pain is inevitable and suffering is a choice, that puts the ball in your court to where you can choose. I'm not going to suffer. Yeah, there's going to be pain, but I choose life. I choose happiness. It's a choice, right? Acceptance is a choice. A couple points that I want to read out from the notes from that session that I had with her. Part of radical reality acceptance, you have to first acknowledge the truth without judgment. You have to turn your mind, right? So choosing to accept repeatedly, choosing to accept. And then at the end of that is freedom. There is a few concepts from Buddhism that I do admire. They actually say that desire is the root of suffering, which I can get behind partly because if you desire something and you don't get that, then you become disappointed. That is what leads to crime, adultery, all these negative things, right? A lot of sin is just the manifestation of human desire. And it's interesting, we live in a capitalistic society where desire is celebrated, right? Hit your goals, goal setting, drive the nice car, take the vacation, make the money, etc. And those are okay, but it's tough. We just have to make sure that we're not driven only by our desires, right? You have to realize that there's a greater purpose, right? And I'll say that you can be driven by desires to help, to love, right? But let me rephrase: you can't be driven by selfish desire, or that'll lead to suffering, right? So in business, radical reality acceptance could look like, hey, I made this bad deal, let me just accept it. And then the moment you do that, you free yourself from continuing down the bad path. A lot of the times we put on our blinders and we refuse to accept whenever we made bad decisions, and that stops us from being able to learn from those bad decisions. The moment you accept and you take responsibility, then you can learn from your mistake. You can look around you and say, oh, this is why things are the way they are, right? If you look at, you can actually start to understand people better whenever you accept reality, right? Like, there's really, to a certain point, you can really even start to crack the matrix in a way that's like, okay, there's Democrats and there's Republicans, left and right, but it's really just a spectrum. We're all just people. Even the Taliban, like people just wildly extreme, like terrorists, right? They laugh at a good joke. They like good food, right? They probably love their grandmother. The thing is if you look at reality and accept it as it is, you realize that most of us are the same, and a lot of our worldviews are shaped by someone else. So we let other people tell us what reality is rather than us forming our own view of reality. And part of radical reality acceptance is having a super small ego and be willing to let your ego get crushed every day and try to have no pride, right? And lower your pride as much as you can, possibly. Because part of accepting reality constantly is realizing that a lot of your views are wrong, and they're going to continue to be wrong, but you just have to keep moving on and be humble and realize that you don't know everything, and keep an open mind. That's the great part about it, because once you do that, like I said, you can learn from your mistakes. You have more clarity, right? That's the end goal with this, is freedom and clarity. So kind of, I like talking about mindset aspects more nowadays rather than just technical. Oh, this is how you do this with this piece of property or make this money, etc. Because you could know all that stuff at the end of the day, but if your mindset isn't on point and you're not working on yourself, it doesn't matter how much money you make, you're going to lose it. Or what's the point, right? Like, psychology is 80% of success. And let me restate that. I should say mindset is, I would say, 80% of success. Psychology is a facet of mindset. Understanding people, which is more sociology. Understanding history, obviously history. All of those things go into mindset, right? So psychology is actually a small piece of mindset. But if you have a solid mindset, success is inevitable. A good mindset is a magnet for success, right? And the more I work on my mindset, the more I realize, like, success is just a concept. I'm already successful, right? You can choose to be successful. The guy that's sleeping on the park bench, right? If all he wants is just to hang out in the park all day, in his mind, he's a success, right? And then if you let society define what success is, that one, that's always changing, and two, you're going to be unhappy. That's not success, actually, right? There was a guy, speaking of a park bench, in the audio recording. I think it's not The Strangest Secret. It's Attitude, and it's by Earl Nightingale. Attitude by Earl Nightingale. And there was a famous restaurateur who eventually owned tons of restaurants and was a multimillionaire. And a reporter asked him, "When did you become a success?" And he was like, "I was a success back whenever I was sleeping on park benches, because in my mind I was a success." And, oh, that's crazy. Well, who does this guy think he is? He wasn't successful. Yeah, he was. Because you first have to become successful in your mind to be successful in the outside world. You must first become the person you wish to be in your mind before you can actually become that person. There is no way it can be the other way around. You cannot be something on the outside and then it happen on the inside. If I want to carry myself like a confident person, I have to become confident in my mind, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, a little bit of a rant. I'm going to go ahead and stop it there and continue my evening, but I hope there was some gems and some golden nuggets in here. A lot of the time I kind of just envision myself speaking to my younger self and saying things that I wish my younger self would help. Really, the main focus of this podcast is young men. If women listen, that's great, you know. But I am really focusing on young men so that they can be sharper and carry themselves more effectively in the world and be better ambassadors for Christ and focus on the 4Fs: faith, family, fitness, and finance to better impact the world. And don't forget to empower and enlighten. If you think that you know somebody that this episode will empower and enlighten, please go ahead and share it to them. Spread some positivity, and I hope you'll have a great day.